Yeah, I actually talked to Kamal about this. I'm going to stand over in the sun. Last night, just to make sure we didn't get into fisticuffs afterwards, because Alistair warned me this would be a little different. TANSTAAFL is there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. And when I first got that, I said, okay, that's like a 3-second subject, really. So I wanted to talk first about what do we really mean by that. I think it's important that we sort of get past this, so we can say the obvious, lunch isn't free. The keg is a very tasty steak and it's $25. If you decide to go for Thai, you can get it for as low as 10, still very tasty. And you can also go to Tour de Ville, which is a rotating restaurant in Montreal at the top of this hotel. It's a gourmet buffet and it's really nice. It's about 40. So I've just stated the obvious and got that out of the way. So why do we bother to have a slogan, given that it's the obvious? I mean, no such thing as a free lunch. Thank God somebody said that, because I was really confused. Well, it turns out that there used to be such a thing as a free lunch. Saloons in the 1800s used to actually advertise free lunch. They would give away free food in order to get people to come into the establishment and drink. So this went on for this went on for a long time, and it was actually pretty well known that you could go get free food if you went into saloons. And the problem was, pretty happy, right? Free food. So what happened? Why this need to say there's no such thing as a free lunch when there clearly was? The problem was this guy. Yeah, he doesn't look very imposing, does he? This is Henry Wallace. He was a vice president under Roosevelt during the Second World War. And he was a Republican and a Libertarian. But he was appalled at the amount of money that the U.S. was spending to execute the war. I mean, it's just a phenomenal amount of money that they were throwing into it. And he actually came out with a proposal at the time, pretty bold for this guy, saying, with the amount of money that we are spending to execute this war, we could actually afford to enforce minimum standards of food, clothing, and shelter for the entire world. And he meant it. Now that unfortunately opened him up to an enormous amount of criticism from the media, who jumped all over him. And their first piece of criticism was, there ain't no such thing as a free lunch. When saloons offered that, they were jacking up the alcohol prices and you were paying for it that way, and you can't just talk about feeding the world as though that money's going to come from nowhere, right? So economists actually jumped on the bandwagon and came up with the no free lunch theorem, and it got really ugly and messy, and that's sort of where this whole thing came from as a genesis. But where most people know it from are these two guys. Robert Heinlein actually came up with the acronym and put it in one of his books in the 60s, and then Milton Friedman actually wrote a book called There's No Such Thing as a Free Lunch. And most people culturally today will get it from one of these two sources. No one ever talks about Wallace, the poor guy. So what we're really talking about is that nothing comes for free. This is what this has come to mean, right? Beyond the economic theory and everything else, when somebody says to you there's no such thing as a free lunch, that's really what they're trying to say. And that's horsepucky. I just don't accept that. So let me tell you why. My wife and I took a road trip down to see my brother out down here in Pine Beach, New Jersey, and then over to see my sister. And it's a good 9-hour drive to get down there, and I just don't do 9 hours in the car. So we went down to Albany and we stayed overnight, because I can do 4. I just can't do 9, So we stayed overnight in Albany, and on the way back we did the same thing, but on the way back we weren't in any great rush. So we thought, well, we're in Albany, we've never been there before. Why not take half a day and see what's in Albany, assuming it could take half a day? Could take an hour, we don't know. So we took a walking tour, and we got as far as Empire Plaza, which is actually really beautiful, built by Rockefeller, and it's these reflecting pools, and there's an egg-shaped auditorium, and it's really kind of weird and wild and interesting. But the weather started to turn kind of ugly, and we were only about halfway through our walking tour. So we were kind of considering going in and seeing the Capitol building, which is sort of the state government building. at one end of the plaza, but I mean, it's supposed to be really architecturally beautiful. We'd heard it was really great, but the tours don't leave that often, and it costs money, and we weren't sure, God, do we want to pay for this? We don't even know if it's going to be any good. And we're sort of debating this amongst ourselves, and we get sort of hallooed from a great distance, and this woman starts walking up to us going, can I help you? And I thought, she must be, this is sort of a state area, she must be a state employee. So we're kind of saying, well, we were thinking about seeing the Capitol building. She says, it's beautiful, and I'll take you, come with me. This is the woman, Norman Suitsma. I asked her permission to put her photo up here. She's a secretary working in an office in one of the office buildings that adjoins the plaza. Every lunch hour, she goes out and walks the various neighborhoods because she just wants to get out of the office, and she really likes Albany. One of her favorite places is the Capitol building. She goes there a lot, particularly when the weather's bad. She knows it like the back of her hand. She knows every guard. She knows every office worker. She took us in and explained the history of the place, how much it cost, how long it took to build. She took us to the Great Western Staircase. This actual photo of the Great Western Staircase, by the way, this is not a sketch. She knows all about how it was built, the workers that built it, the workers that decided to carve their grandmother's faces into the frescoes instead of the faces they were supposed to put, their bosses with the little horns on them. And she's giving us all this history and this background. Took us to the Senate floor, took us to the Assembly floor, took us, when we were finished with the Capitol building, she says, it's probably still raining, I don't want you to get wet. Let me show you the Plaza Concourse that runs underneath the whole complex. And she takes us down and shows us that, and the restaurants and everything else. And then says, okay, so, that you can get to the State Museum that way, I have to go back to work. And she goes back to work. Now, that's about as close to a free lunch as I've ever seen. She didn't ask anything of us. She took pleasure in showing us what she showed us. She thought it was a great thing. Right? So what is a free lunch? Well, a free lunch is an act of the heart. It's an act of compassion. It's the joy of doing something because you can share what you have or what you know because it doesn't cost you anything. Not in the traditional sense. She did not have to go out and do anything special to do what she did for us. It's giving because you can. Because it's not going to put you out. And we used to call that hospitality. In fact, hospitality used to cover doing things even when it does put you out. And that used to be important. In fact, it used to be the cornerstone of all these different cultures. And in many of these cultures, it still is a cornerstone of that culture. It used to be that if you showed decent hospitality, you were a good standing member of society. And if you did not show good hospitality, then you were pretty well ostracized. It was that important. You were expected to take care not only of your friends or your neighbors, but strangers, people you never even knew, and in fact you were expected to treat your enemies as though they were your friends if they were in your house. That used to be important. And to a large extent over the last 20 or 30 years, that's become a lot less important to us than it used to. If you go back into Western culture as far back as recent as the 50s, you were raised with these ethics and these principles about how you should treat people, particularly when you're in your home. And we've kind of lost that, So I would challenge you to rediscover your sense of hospitality. Bring that back. It was an important thing. And it's the cornerstone of a free lunch. Thanks.